So guys, today we are here celebrating Workplace Wellbeing Day, and it's all around ways to wellness while working from home. Now, what I would like you to do, guys, I'd like you to have a pen and a piece of paper for this session, because the real emphasis of what we're doing today is it's all around this idea that as adults, we don't learn from experience, but we actually learn from reflecting on our experiences. So what I'd love us to do is have that pen, have the piece of paper, because as we go through this session, we're going to give you some nice action steps that you can take away today. We're going to start it here, guys, and this is around this idea of what is wellness. And I actually love this quote from Martin Seligman. It's all around this idea that we can maximize our well-being and our wellness in order to flourish in life. So is health and wellness more than just the absence of illness? It's the idea that if we don't make time today to prioritize ourselves in terms of activity, nutrition, recovery, we may be forced to actually have to make time in the future. But Martin Seligman actually takes that a step further, and he talks about when we have a structure and a plan in all of those areas, we actually flourish in life. So we flourish in areas such as our work life. We become more productive. We flourish in areas such as our family life. We're nicer to be around. We improve our mood. So today we're going to talk a little bit about your why it's important to you when it comes to managing your wellness. And I want to start by bringing you in here, guys. It's called the ladder of inference. So when we look at this, we see that it starts with the reality and the facts. Then you've got focus, interpreted reality. Then it drives up towards assumptions, conclusions, beliefs, and then we have habits, behaviors, and actions. So what I want you to take away from this initially, guys, is that the reality and the facts, so the world as it is never the way that I see it, you see it, because we're all looking at it from our own lens. And wellness is no different. Let me give you a little bit of an example. So an example would be the current situation that we face, COVID-19. You'll see that beside focus and interpreted reality, I have control, as these are things that you are in control of, as well as your habits, behaviors, and actions. But look at two sides of the coin. If I'm looking at the current situation as a major disruption that I didn't ask for, and as a result of that, I start to bring in all of these excuses as to why I can't exercise, why my nutrition has gone out the window, if you like, why I'm not prioritizing my recovery. Or I can look at it on the other side of the coin, and I can ask myself, okay, during this period, it's very important for me to have a structure, although it's temporary, around my wellness. So if I used to go to the gym, I'm going to change that structure now. If I used to eat in the local cafe at lunchtime, I'm going to change that structure now. I'm not going to all of a sudden, deprioritize all of these things that actually help me in normal circumstances. Because if we do decide to focus on the negative, well, then that's going to drive our assumptions, our conclusions, our beliefs. And the thing about beliefs drive what we focus on, and they also drive our habits, our behaviors, and our actions. So you may say, what has this got to do with wellness? Well, actually, I always think with wellness, we look at it with a carrot or a stick approach. So for example, you may have an event coming up, and that's the carrot. So you get yourself ready for that by prioritizing nutrition and exercise. But then once that event comes, we forget about it. All of a sudden, that plan has been put to the side. It drops down the priority list. Then on the other side of all of this, we actually have the stick. So that might be, I suffer from burnout due to work, so now I'm going to prioritize recovery. Or it may even look like I've had to go to the doctor and he's told me that I need to start exercising because of my cholesterol levels. These are all carrot and stick approaches. Whereas the approach that I want you to take is it's emphasized in what you see here, guys. I want you to start to find out your why. Ask yourself, who am I? And why is wellness important to me? Now, the way we look at wellness is a little bit different. We look at wellness through the streams of structured activities, spontaneous actions, and internal relationships. And let me dive in a little deeper to that. So you'll see here, guys, managing wellness effectively is across those 4 streams: mindset, exercise and activity, nutrition, and recovery. Now, when we look at structured activities, you'll see examples there throughout those 4 different areas. Why is structure important? Well, if we haven't got structure around an area of our life, there's a high chance that we're not going to be successful in that area. Think about work for the moment. Think about all of the structures that are normally in place for you there. Think about any other areas where you find success in life. There's normally structure in place. If we think about spontaneous actions, what are we talking about? Well, I'll give you some examples. It could be the mindless snacking that we're doing, some of us may be doing at the moment, based on working from home. That's a spontaneous action. It's data and information that we can collect that has a need sitting underneath it. So for example, the need in that case may be that, okay, I'm actually a little bit bored. So rather than doing something else, I'm trying to fulfill that need by having a snack when I don't really need it. And we're going to get into more detail on that, guys, because I have lots of nice tips for you in that area. We also look at internal relationships. So this is the idea that you've got an internal relationship with yourself when it comes to recovery, nutrition, exercise, mindset. All of these areas we have an internal relationship with. And it's important that we actually take a little bit of a deep dive into those. We investigate those because these are the reasons why we're doing our exercise, why we're eating well, etc. And if I was to bring it into this point here, so we're talking about core values. We're looking at core values. Who am I? And let's try and attach those to wellness. So let me give you a little example. If family for me is one of those areas that is really in my core values, so it's really important to me, well, maybe I might change my reason for exercising. If my initial reason for exercising was I want to lose a couple of pounds, well, maybe I might attach something stronger to that. It might, for example, be family's one of my core values, and I actually want to be here for the next 20, 30, 40 years. The science and research tells me that if I exercise regularly, that will help me obviously, achieve that. So instead of looking at exercise as this thing that I do when I want to drop a couple of pounds, I now look at exercise as this thing that I do because I want to see my children and my children's children all grow up. Now that reason is a lot stronger. That's going to get you out of bed at 6 a.m. to do the exercise session. Whereas if it's just to drop a couple of pounds, it may not be as strong. And again, you can apply any of these core values. If you attach them to wellness, you're starting to build out your why, that really important reason why you exercise. And here's just some examples, guys. When we think of structure, spontaneous actions, and internal relationships, here are a couple of different things. So with structure, we're looking at it's what you do every day. Spontaneous actions is more around the how I go about every day, how I react, etc. And internal relationships is all about your why. So what I want you to think about for a moment is this idea of the I ate last night. Well, rather than judging yourself over that, show yourself some compassion, but listen to that and let it guide you. It's telling you simply that it's time to build a plan around this area. So when you start to build that plan, you put that plan into action. You go outside, for want of a better word. You put it into action. You see how it works for you. And then you reflect back in. You ask yourself, how am I doing with this current plan? How is this situation actually helping me at the moment? Am I happier? Have I got more energy, etc.? So that's just a framework that you can use, guys. When it comes to actually putting a plan in place, staying committed, think about structure, think about your spontaneous actions, and think about your internal relationships when it comes to all of this. And when you're doing that, take this inside, outside, inside approach. Now, one thing I want to touch on with us as well before we move into some of the takeaway tips that you can actually bring away with you today is this idea of consistency versus intensity. We want you guys to be actually taking a consistent approach with your wellness. So you might consider for a moment which one of these three you might best define you. Are you the good intender, which is high in consistency, but you don't really challenge yourself? You don't really explore what your boundaries could be when it comes to wellness. Are you a committed visionary? Somebody who's able to adapt their plan. Somebody who's able to actually, no matter what the constraints are that are put on them, they can easily flip and keep wellness a priority. Or are you an instinctive go-getter? Are you somebody that is high in intensity but quite low in consistency and struggles to adapt when we face disruption like we're facing at the moment? So all the tips that I'm going to give you today is going to help you enhance or even become that committed visionary. Now, the step one on this journey, guys, is you have to understand the topic, the goal, the reality, your real inspiration, how you're going to measure success. And for that, we use the T-GROW model. So for that, I want you to, and I've just put in an example here, building a structure around my physical and mental wellness. Goal, what would I like to do about it today? So think about when it comes to you managing your wellness or building a structure, what's the first area that jumps out? Is it to start your 5 30-minute sessions of exercise? Is it to begin to meditate because you've been feeling quite anxious at the moment? And then you ask yourself, what is the current reality? What is my situation? How often do I exercise? Am I at 2 sessions already, or am I starting from 0? Because either is okay. Today we're focusing on 1% changes, guys. Those small things that you can do that will really make a difference. And then we look at the options. What can I actually start doing today? What else might that look like? And flesh those out. And then we're thinking, we've mentioned it before, what's the why? What's the real inspiration behind this? And then a very important part of this process, guys, how will I measure success? How will I measure success in this area? They're all different questions I want you to ask yourself today. If you can write those down at the moment and then you can reference those as we go through the rest of the session, that would be fantastic. It's a great way to start reflecting on some of the learning from today. So the way that we've structured this out, guys, and you're more than welcome to send in actually questions into the chat yourself. But what I've done is I've brought up some of the questions that we've been asked quite a lot over the last number of weeks. First one is, I don't have time to exercise. Now, when I mention all of these questions, I want you to ask yourself, where on that ladder of inference, is that person focusing? Are they focusing on what they can control? Are they focusing on what they can't control? Are they saying, yeah, listen, there's possibilities here? Or are they limited? Have they got that fixed mindset or growth mindset? Because if I look at the question, I don't have time to exercise, 10,000 steps a day, look at the impact of that. So this was a study, guys, that was over a 2-week period. Individuals were asked to go from 10,000 steps per day to 1,300. And you can actually see the difference in terms of, just in terms of the physical. Look at the muscle mass loss. Look at the increase in visceral fat. So not only obviously does getting out in the open have massive psychological benefits, but look at the physical benefits to just 10,000 steps per day. Now, if I bring it on a touch, guys, a lot of us obviously at the moment, we may be confined to a 2K radius for exercise, but also we may be doing a lot of exercise in our house at the moment. So I want to encourage you all to try and start doing some resistance training. A lot of us avoid it for a couple of reasons. One is some of us don't know what it is. Some of us have tried it before and we jumped in too quick. We did a class that was too advanced for us and we were too sore the next day. And the other piece is that we think it's all weight training. Guys, we can get a very effective routine done, 20 minutes, with our own body weight. Squats, push-ups, planks, and the benefit is all of the actual benefits, if you like, that resistance training give us. So muscle strength, improved cardiovascular fitness, flexibility, mobility. There are tons of benefits from starting resistance training. And the time frame itself, 20 minutes for an effective exercise routine. What a fantastic way to actually start your day. You can involve all the family in a lot of these sessions as well. So when it comes to resistance training, where do I start? Start very simply, guys, with 3 sessions per week. As part of Irish Life Health and the My Life app, there is at the moment some fantastic content up there for resistance training routines, purely body weight. So you're looking at 3 sessions per week, 20 to 30 minutes, picking 5 body weight exercises, which we'll have already set up for you. Don't avoid resistance training because you feel that you're not fit enough to do it. Or it's something that you'll start when you go back, or you'll get a trainer, you'll go to the gym. Guys, a lot of these routines are very, very easy to follow, and they have so many benefits right across the board. Like, I would say, guys, over the weekend, try it once if you haven't done it yet. Give it one go, get the family involved. It is so much fun and so beneficial. Now, another area that actually really stands out at the moment is this idea that we are sitting a lot more. And I've heard this from a lot of clients. And if you are sitting or standing watching this presentation, one thing I want you to be aware of is just your posture, how you're holding yourself at the moment. So what I want you to do is, if you're sitting, guys, sit up on the bony prominence of your backside. So you're sitting tall, draw your shoulders back, open up that chest. Try and stay strong in that core area. Very, very important, because I even find myself, if you see the diagram here, I even find myself slumping over, looking into the laptop. And it's just important that we regularly bring ourselves back into that good posture. Now, if we bring this on a touch, what are other things that I can do to help with my posture? Well, regular movement, guys. Regularly getting up from the desk for even 2 to 3 minutes is very important at the moment. Because if we find ourselves staring at the screen for 2-3 hours at a time, well, what's going to happen is we're going to start to feel the lower back getting a bit tight, the neck getting a bit sore. Another thing that we can do is bringing in regular stretching and mobility. So I like to start my day with 5 minutes of mobility. It wakens the body and the mind, gets us ready for the day. I encourage all our clients to do it. Stretching in the evening time. 5 minutes of stretching, guys. So you've got 5 minutes of stretching. Like, ideally, if you can log into an hour's yoga class, brilliant. But that's not always the case for us. But don't underestimate the benefit of just 5 minutes stretching in the evening time to actually release tension in the body and the mind. And as you see there, again, emphasizing the short bouts of resistance training. It's so good for your posture, guys. Like, any one of us who suffer from lower back pain or, knee pain or anything like that, obviously with the consultation of your doctor, for example, resistance training shouldn't be avoided by anybody. I've worked with individuals who started resistance training in their 70s and they've never felt as good. I had one client who told me once that, he said, "Mark, I know the program of resistance training is working." He was 65 at the time. How do you know? I asked him. He said, "Because I used to have to sit on the edge of the bed to put on my socks." He said, "Now I can stand on one leg again and put on my sock." I know that sounds very, very simple, but it's sometimes the smallest things that show us that 20 minutes of exercise is actually so beneficial. So don't underestimate that, guys. Very good for helping avoid injury. So one question people ask a lot is, "Mark, if I'm looking over the course of a week, what does my sessions look like?" Because the guy I sit beside in work, he's a marathon runner. And then the girl who sits on this side, she trains for triathlons. So these guys are doing 10 sessions, 12 sessions a week. Is that what healthy looks like? I hear that a lot. Guys, you need to remember that if you can get 5 sessions to 30 minutes of exercise, you are on your way to managing your wellness effectively. So if we think about it over 2 sides of a coin, we have structured exercise on one side, we have activity on the other. With activity, We just need to try and be more active during the day. Try and hit those 10,000 steps. With structured exercise, I want you to try and get 30 minutes 5 times per week. A mix of resistance training, a mix of cardio-based training, maybe getting outdoors, fantastic weather at the moment. And yes, maybe logging into that yoga class once, twice a week. But if you can't, you can still do your stretching and mobility work yourself. And even just build it into your day. As I mentioned, in the morning time, in the evening time, can be very beneficial for us, guys. Now, one question we've been asked a lot is how to get children active at this time. The biggest tip I can give here, and it's actually a great tip for us as adults as well, guys, is structure. We love structure as adults, and children certainly love structure, and it's definitely been disrupted for them at the moment. What I would say is, when you think about whether it's studies, TV, eating, activity, build structure around it for the whole family. Have times where you're doing your family activity. Have times where you've got your 3 structured meals for all the family and you all eat together. It's not just going to benefit the children, it's going to benefit you as well. It's going to help them deal with this current situation because they're uncertain based on the lack of structure, the same way we are uncertain and we're a little bit anxious. So bringing structure back into their day is extremely important, guys. Now, when we look at the next part, I want to bring it into nutrition for a moment. And before we race into a couple of tips for you guys, I want you to ask yourself, and just think about this for a moment. Ask yourself, have you brought in any mindless or less conscious habitual processes around your food? Like snacking through the day, like skipping meals at the moment. I want you to think about that for a moment while I hydrate myself with a quick drink of water. Now, the reason I say that, guys, is, as I mentioned at the top of the session, when we are trying to serve for a need, for example, like being bored if I'm working from home, right? It could be that I'm lacking that interaction with other colleagues, so I'm missing that out at the moment. Now, what that social interaction does for us is the brain loves it. So the brain is producing dopamine based on interacting with individuals in our environment. When we start to lose that, we start to search for it in other ways. And food is one of those ways that actually activates that reward center in the brain. So if anybody finds themselves snacking more recently, you are not alone. You are probably in the majority. But there's 2 things that I want you to do here. The first is, I want you to try and explore the need that you're serving for and ask yourself, is there a better way to serve this need? So you might now write down 1 or 2 spontaneous actions, right? Based around your snacking or your exercise. And you might explore the idea that, is there a better way to serve this current need? Now, let me give you an example of that. So I did a webinar yesterday for a small group team, and I spoke about spontaneous actions. And this individual talked about exercise and said how they just kept going back. If I had a session in at 1 o'clock, they'd keep going back to see if any emails had come in, and they were getting back answering all of the emails, even the ones that could have waited until after the exercise session. So when we do that, when we reply to an email, it's a great feeling. We activate that little reward center, even if it's not a high priority email. So this individual was, before they were going for their structured run at 1 o'clock, they would go and answer all the emails that were flooding in. That was his spontaneous action. It was this idea that he'd constantly go back and go back and go back, and he wasn't prioritizing the structure that he put around exercise. He was telling himself, oh no, I have to answer this, I have to answer this. Now the thing is, if that individual had stuck to the 1 o'clock run, they would have actually come back flooded with endorphins, flooded with dopamine from that exercise session. But it's hard to get that into their mind in that current situation. So by you just being more aware of it, you can start to stick to your priorities. If you've 3 structured meals, you'll stick to those. You won't go snacking when you know you don't really need the food, because the second part of this is, if I was to ask you all, are you addicted to sugar, right? a lot of us would put up our hand. But we're not born essentially with a gene that makes us a sugar addict, although, you know, some of us are more inclined to go for sweet versus savoury, etc. But what we are born with is that when we eat sugar, what happens is we get a release of dopamine. It activates the reward center in our brain. So we get short pleasure from eating refined sugar. We get a short spike in our blood sugar levels. We get a short spike in our energy levels. But as they say, guys, what comes up must come down. So my dopamine crashes, my energy levels crash, my blood sugar levels crash. And then I look for the next hit. So what I've actually set up, rather than having a steady flow of dopamine coming from all different areas of my life, exercise, interaction with others, regular eating patterns, I'm setting myself up with the peak and trough all through the day. Now that's going to impact my mood. It's going to impact my cognitive function. It's going to impact my energy. It's going to impact my sleep that night as well. So the fact that we can begin to notice that this is what's happening, we can start to open up our toolkit on how we can actually counteract that. So one thing I would recommend everybody begin to do is to start be conscious of food labels. Just start being conscious of the food labels. So if you have a trolley full of your groceries, you don't have to read every food label. But if there's something that you have on a regular basis, like if I was having the breakfast of cornflakes, skimmed milk, orange juice and an Actimel every day, there's a couple of things about that meal. The first one is it's not very balanced. It's a lot of carbohydrates, not very much protein, not very much good fats in there either. So what could I start to do? Well, I could start to identify, okay, well, how much carbohydrates is in this meal? How much protein? How much fats? And we can do that by looking at the food labels. But another big thing that we can do is we can start to identify actually how much sugar is in the breakfast I'm consuming. Because if I was to say to you that that breakfast had 15 to 20 teaspoons of sugar, you probably would think, God, I would have thought that was half that mark. And that's the thing about a lot of the foods that we eat on a regular basis is that, and I don't blanket every food company with this, but food companies want to make us, if you like, more addicted to certain foods. They're not necessarily just out there to try and make us healthier. So you got to consider that when you're putting together your structure around your nutrition. Because what can happen is if your structure is poor, like you have a poor breakfast, well then, I'm sure you can guess, you're actually leading to encouraging more of those spontaneous actions. So if my structure is poor, the food quality is poor, I'm far more likely to bring in more of those less conscious habitual processes during the day. Now, another key part of this, guys, is obviously hydration. You've obviously saw me taking 1 or 2 sips of water so far today. It is so easy to sit down at the laptop and 3 hours have gone by and we haven't actually drank any water. We all fall into that. So one of the things I have done is just left my glass. When it's finished, I try and get up. It brings in the regular movement piece. I fill it back up, I sit back down. It only takes me less than a minute, but it's actually getting my body up. It's getting my body moving. And another way to think about it is that 1% drop in dehydration leads to 1% drop in hydration leads to a 5% reduction in cognitive function. So I want you to remember that. I also want you to remember that when it comes to actually, and we all know this one, but a lot of the times when I'm dehydrated, I actually think that I'm hungry. So when I'm thirsty sometimes and I need water, I actually portray that as being hungry and in need of more of those snacks that my body really doesn't need. So again, recapping that, guys, when it comes to your nutrition so far, ask yourself, what is the need I'm serving for here? Ask yourself around the common foods that you eat. Do I know what's in them? Like for 1 teaspoon of sugar, there's 4 grams. Is my breakfast high, medium or low in sugar content? Is there enough protein there? Is there enough good fats there? And have I built in structure where I'm making sure I'm drinking water all through the day? Now, this is a very interesting question that was brought up during a webinar last week, guys. And just to read it out for you, obviously you can see it there, but The individual said they'd started to drink small amounts of alcohol during the week to help them sleep. They found that this was a potential option at the moment. But when we explore this, guys, I want you to bring it back to that ladder of inference again. So I want you to bring it back to what do you focus on, and then what drives your assumptions. So this individual is assuming that the alcohol is helping them fall asleep quicker. But it could be a number of things, obviously, that are contributing, because what we know is that sugar and alcohol actually impact on sleep. So it reduces the REM sleep, the rapid eye movement. So it's decreasing the quality of our sleep pattern. We've looked at this with clients where we've actually used an ECG monitor to actually look at their heart rate and see from the time they fall asleep after drinking 1 or 2 drinks in the evening time, how long they fall into a deep sleep. Now, yes, there are the outliers who they drink and they go asleep and everything's fine. But for the majority of us, it takes us longer to fall into that deep sleep in order to get good quality restorative sleep when we have had a drink. Now, I'm also not the alcohol police. I do enjoy a glass 1 or 2 nights a week. But that's the key, guys. Rather than looking at it every night of the week, keep it to 1 to 2 nights during the week. And again, it's because that alcohol does carry excess calories. 250, 200 calories per drink in the evening time. It all adds up over time. So just be conscious of that during the current situation. Now, one of the next questions that I was asked, guys, and it was very interesting, and I want to spend a little bit of time here for individuals, because what I would say, just to recap on some of the stuff that we've spoken about so far, if you pick up your phone and you Google the best exercise regime, the best nutrition program, you'll find tons of information on the internet. But you won't find on the internet your current structure, your current spontaneous actions, and your current internal relationship with wellness. So how you view your wellness. And they're the foundations that make you successful with your program. So I've run you through exercise tips, nutrition tips. I'm going to bring you through some extra recovery tips now as well. But you've got to remember that you need to apply it to your lifestyle. Think about the 1% changes and think about what you can start doing today. Use that T-Grow model to build that framework for yourself. Because if I am honest, guys, over 12 years of working with people, it's not the fantastic training program or the brilliant nutrition plan that gets them the results. It's when they reflect on their experience, when they look at their structure, when they assess their spontaneous actions, and when they ask themselves, why is this all important to me? And I have a nice story to finish with at the end, guys, which I think will bring that all to life. But for now, another question I was asked actually this week. I'm feeling quite anxious and stressed. Is there any way of controlling this? I'm sure you've all started to read the pie chart that you have in front of you there, guys. That's essentially what our life would look like if we dissected it into different parts. And these all flow into one another. Now, at the moment, with COVID-19, each of the areas of our life have been disrupted, either positively or negatively, based on what's happening at the moment. So you are going to feel anxious. You're going to feel a little bit more stressed. That is completely fine. You need to be okay with that, guys. What I want you to actually say to yourself, though, is there are effective ways of dealing with this. There is a toolkit for recovery. And that's what I want to speak a little bit to. Some of you may have come across this before, but this is the idea of the red and blue zone. And it comes from sports psychologist Kerry Evans. So I want you just to take a look at both of them there, guys. Look at the blue zone and what it represents. Look at the red zone and what it represents. We also see this represented in the likes of the red zone represents the chimp brain if you're looking at the Chimp Paradox book. The blue zone represents the human brain. What it essentially means is that all through the day, this process around recovery is happening. We think recovery sometimes is when we put the head on the pillow, but actually it's happening all through the day. And we want to try and be able to have a toolkit which helps us move away from the red zone when we've gone too close to it. we start to reduce back towards that sweet spot, tapping into that blue zone. Now, how do we do that, guys? How do we set ourselves up to be able to do that? Well, very simply, let's take a breathing exercise. So if I come out of a meeting and I'm about to go straight into the next one, and I don't stop, I don't consider how I'm currently feeling at the moment, well, I could go in the red zone, full of sympathetic activity. I could be reacting emotionally to questions that are being asked. I could find it hard to prioritise the really vital things that need to be brought up in this meeting. But if I take myself away for 3 minutes and I just begin to breathe, what do I notice? I start to notice actually there's a lot of anxiety. I'm feeling quite stressed. My heart rate is actually beating quite fast. All of my breathing activity is in my chest. As I start to slow that breathing rhythm, all of a sudden I start to breathe deeper into my abdomen. I start to feel some of that anxiety start to wash away. Now what I'm starting to do is tap into that blue zone. Tap into that thinking mind. Slow, deliberate, conscious. Remember, guys, we have 70 to 90,000 thoughts on any given day. 75 or so % of those are repetitive thoughts. It's like me saying to you, I want you to have a structure, I want you to pick up your spontaneous actions, and I want you to investigate your internal relationships. But I want you to try and do it without writing it down. Keep it all up here. It's going to be very hard for you to constantly bring that from your subconscious into your conscious mind. So imagine the same thing around recovery. If I just expect my body to recover following a day sitting in front of the laptop, following going from one meeting to the next meeting, it is not going to happen, guys. We need to be kinder to ourselves. In the wellness industry, we use certain terms. For example, when we look at exercise, we talk about no pain, no gain. Like, incredible. It's incredible that that's still around to this day. When we look at nutrition, less calories means I'm being healthier. Absolutely not. And when it comes to recovery, guys, we use terms like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, or sleep is for wimps. Guys, recovery is a vital process in order to keep us happy, keep us productive, keep us energized. And it doesn't just mean when you put your head on the pillow at night time. This needs to be a tool we use and we tap into all through the day, because it is natural to be stressed and to be anxious. This idea of a stress-free life, it's never going to happen, because on the other side of stress is reward. The other side of challenge is reward and growth. What we need to do is build a toolkit for it. And I love this analogy because I think it really brings it to life. We don't want to end up falling into this always on syndrome. This idea that our heart rate is constantly elevated, because an example where this might show up is you've got the fittest woman in the office who runs marathons and does triathlons, and next of all you find out the individual is having heart issues. Why? Because this person was constantly in this sympathetic fight or flight. Now that was great in prehistoric times when we needed to escape a saber-toothed tiger, but this shows up in today's society with things like constantly being on our phone, constantly checking back in on our emails. We need to be kind to ourselves. We need to just be able to unwind, relax, and have a toolkit for that, guys. That does consider maximizing the sleep, maximizing our sleep pattern. Very, very important. It also looks at simple things like if you are feeling anxious and stressed, well, we know coffee produces excess adrenaline, excess cortisol. Why not cut down by a cup or two during the day? We also need to be very mindful around certain areas that you see here. Are you constantly scrolling on social media? That's going to impact our recovery in the evening time. I know as soon as I pick up this phone and I stare at the screen, my sympathetic activity is activated. So if I get into bed and the need I'm serving for is recovery, but yet I constantly take out my phone, there has to be better ways for me to serve that need. Look at the other areas to be mindful in, guys. With work, try and have that cut-off time. If it's not a priority, can you get back to it tomorrow? With nutrition, be mindful of snacking. Be mindful if you're skipping meals. All of this stuff is telling you something. Be mindful of your self-talk. Remember the two sides of the coin. Are you focusing on all of the things that you can't control? Because if you are, you're going to be flowing your energy into that negative fixed mindset. Focus on what you can control. Positive self-talk. Here are some very simple recovery tips, guys. Because I'm just conscious of our time, what I will do is please get in touch with us if you want a copy of these slides. But please feel free to take a quick little photograph of that slide as well at the moment if you like. And as always, you can get in touch with us. But there's one bit I want to get to before we finish up today, guys. So I'll give you a second just to take a screenshot of that just in case you want to. And we're just going to press on one area. Guys, this is very important. Mindful action steps. I would encourage everybody to start to bring in a little bit of, whether it's just even breathing techniques, whether it's journaling. This follows on from the effective recovery steps. And I can't highlight that enough, but the area I want to spend the last minute or two on is, I got asked this question today actually, and I popped it in here. What is your best advice to stay motivated? And I love how the backdrop reads, work harder, because it couldn't be further from the truth. What can I do at the moment to stay motivated? And I've got it there for you guys. Accountability, support, track your progress, build structure in, understand why, and listen to yourself. Remember that inside, outside, inside approach. That's very important. But the one thing that I want you to think about at the moment is, with the current situation that we face, everybody's structure has been disrupted. We have now had to build temporary structures. Some people's temporary structure is fantastic, others, they are struggling at the moment. The best way you can stay motivated is to think about all of those people around you. We talk about bigger than self goals, but let me put it another way for you. Let's view COVID-19 at the moment as this hole that we've dug. So this hole has been dug for us, and there's been one or two options that you've been given. You've either been told you can jump into the hole and you can jump in with everyone else and you can focus on what you can't control and you can be negative and have a fixed mindset, or the second option is that you can stand on the ledge and you can put your hand in and you can help people get out. You can inspire them to get out and follow me. Look, this isn't as bad as we think. We're going to get on the other end of this. Here's why we need to prioritize our wellness. But let's think about motivation when it comes to that. It's very easy to jump in that hole and encourage other people to come in with you. Yeah, it's impossible. Sure, I'm eating all around me and I haven't exercised in 2 weeks. But again, try and remember your why. Why is it that you're exercising? Because science and research tell us that if I eat better, my mood is improved. If I'm active, my mood is improved. If I get good quality recovery, my mood is improved. If I speak to myself in a positive manner, my mood is improved. Guys, to deal with COVID-19 and deal with everything else that may come our way, we have to lean into our wellness at this time. We just have to. But what we can do to stay motivated is to actually be the hand that reaches in and helps other people realize that. So for everybody at the moment, I ask you just to be mindful of both yourself, how you're speaking to yourself, what your structures look like, but also try and help out, whether it's family members, whether it's friends, even if it's jumping on a Zoom call, something as simple as that, and chatting to somebody for 20-30 minutes could make all the difference to that person and actually leave you feeling incredibly motivated afterwards. Now, just before we finish up, guys, I would like to again apologize. Technology, a lot of the time it's fantastic. Some of the times it can actually be our enemy. When we went to start, my Wi-Fi I think cut out. So for anybody who maybe missed just a slight bit at the start, I apologise. I'll have the full recording of this so you can watch it back as well. If you have any further questions, please feel free to get in touch with myself. Mark@fitvision.ie is my email address. And I would just like to say a massive thank you from Irish Life Health, from FitVision. We hope you enjoy the rest of National Workplace Wellbeing Day and have a fantastic May bank holiday. Thank you all for joining us.